most improved. Number 1, Zach LaVine. And number 2, Brandon Ingram.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today we are looking back at the 5 games from Sunday. We are previewing an 11-game day in the NBA on Monday. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Make sure you have checked out my waiver wire show, which went up earlier today, and my week 6 preview show, which went up yesterday. They'll give you some good tips on guys to add and ways to play this week. It is one of the worst weeks for fantasy basketball in the NBA, Thanksgiving week, with games really shoehorned into those days so that Thursday can be taken off. Some really wildly large days, as we can see. Starting off with the 11 games on Monday, and then, nonsensely, just 2 games on Tuesday. So, let's look at those games from Sunday to kick things off. The first one of those games, the all-conquering Dallas Mavericks, they get the win over the Houston Rockets, 137-123. Of course, it's Luka Doncic, 41, 6 and 10, 2 steals and a block, 52 from the field, 75 from the line. Numerous questions that come into me. Is he a sell high? I don't actually think so. I think that he is a guy that maybe could be the number 2 or number 3 guy when all is said and done at the end of this season. He's going to be in the running for the number 1 pick next year. If you're starting a dynasty league, he's the number 1 guy that you take in pretty much every situation. He is putting up numbers like they are pretty much unheard of for a bloke at his age, 20 years of age. Doncic putting up really crazy numbers. The story here, I guess, is Timmy Hardaway, who played a whopping 38 minutes. He stayed in the starting lineup despite Seth Curry returning. 31 points with 5 triples. He also had 5 assists and he had 2 steals. Now, 18 shots is a lot for Hardaway. Previously, he really hadn't gotten to 30 minutes at all. He'd been playing relatively well, though, over the last 3 games. And with Curry back, I thought he'd lose playing time, but he didn't. He actually gained it. The last 2 games, yes, they were blowouts, but he was under 24 minutes in those, 22 and 18 in those 2 games. They were blowouts, but Jalen Brunson relegated to a nothing role, 3 minutes there. Curry just 15 minutes. I have zero trust in the rotations really outside of Doncic and Porzingis for this team. But Hardaway, if you need a scoring punch, if you need some threes, he's going to be able to provide that, at least in the short term. He's worth at least looking at your streamer spot, seeing whether it makes sense on your team. But again, when we look at this week, look at the schedule, look at where his games fit in. If you add him, will you actually play him on any of the days? Because I'm not sure that it's a long-term sort of a situation for Hardaway. Porzingis. 23 and 13, 2 triples, 2 steals and a block. His rebound numbers are really high at the moment. He's starting to put together some better shooting nights as well. He looks, pretty much just like we expect Porzingis to look. And the 34 minutes is encouraging. Like Dorian Finney-Smith had the 12 and 10 double-double, hit 2 threes, had a steal and a block. His minutes do fluctuate. He's pretty hard to rely upon. Dwight Powell, 2 points in 26 minutes. The usage isn't there. 5 boards. Porzingis is getting all of those. 2 blocks for Powley. He probably will have some stretches of 12-team league value. I don't think we need to wait around for those to be executed or realised. So it's probably a drop in 12-teamers. Curry, of course, never was a 12-team league guy. While Delon Wright had 9 points with 5 assists. I still like Wright. He's just not being used the way that we thought he'd be used in the preseason, just those 20 to 24 minutes a night. It's not enough to have him as a must-roster guy. For the Rockets, Jimmy Harden had 32, 9 and 11 with 2 triples, 8 of 10 from the line. Fantastic stuff again from him. While PJ Tucker, a big night from Tux. Now, Tucker's shooting this season is just way up from where it was last year. 16 points, 2 triples, 2 steals and a block. I still view him as more of a steals and threes streamer, more of a steals guy than anything. And the shooting we're getting at the moment is just a nice little bonus, but it's not really something I think we should be relying upon too heavily. While Westbrook went a magnificent 9 of 10 from the line, that is obviously encouraging. The other shooting, never going to be good. But 27, 5 and 6, 2 threes, a steal, 9 of 10 from the line, not a bad night. Mr. 20 rebounds, Clint Capella. 21 and 22. This rebound run is absolutely insane from Capella. Now, he didn't block a shot, and he was a horrible 1 of 5 from the line, but these rebound numbers, generally the blocks numbers, the scoring, the field goal percentage, has been really super valuable, and it was great to see Danny House back in action here. The Doctor had 16 points with 3 triples and a steal. The shooting wasn't quite there, but I do believe he is a 12-team league guy. Not much else really happening. Benny McLemore and Austin Rivers back to complete nothings with House back in the lineup. Next game up, the Sacramento Kings on the road at the Wizards get the win, 113-106. Big Rashawn Holmes, 36 minutes, 16 and 10, 2 steals, 4 blocks, 7 of 9 from the field. Now, Holmes is playing out of his mind at the moment, and like I've said plenty of times, he's a must-roster guy. I do not give a shit about Marvin Bagley returning. Now, when Bagley returns, maybe it hurts Holmes. Maybe. But I don't actually care at this point. You just got to add him. If he's there, you just add him, and let's see what happens. Because maybe he doesn't impact him. And if he doesn't, then you're looking at a top 60, top 65 sort of a guy for the rest of the season. He could work together. I think Holmes has considerably outplayed Dedmon this season. He's considerably outplayed what Bagley's done over the course of his career. And while they do want to develop Bagley and get him in there, and they will, no doubt about that, as I continually say, Holmes' game isn't built on usage. It's not him going out there and scoring 25 a night. And he still will get those minutes, even if there maybe is a bit of a clunky fit situation. Holmes is killing it. The pencil, Harrison Barnes. Barnesy. 26 points, 3 triples, 4 rebounds, super hot shooting, 88 from the field and 82 from the line, which of course isn't going to sustain, and as usual, he did absolutely nothing else. So Barnes is more of a waiver wire type of guy, while Bogdanovic, only 28 minutes for Bogdan, 21, 4 and 4. He said his hammy is bothering him a little bit, so his status for Monday's game is still up in the air, despite claiming it was a cramp a week ago. So that is something to watch. Bud had 18, 2 and 5, Budrick Hield, while Corey Joseph, he is an assists and steals type streamer. 36 minutes for Joseph, 10 points, 5 assists and 2 steals, and isn't really a 12-team league must-roster player. Nemanja Bjelica is 6 and 12 with 3 steals and a block, but he is the guy that's really going to cop it when Bagley returns. He could go down to a 15, 14 minute a night role when Bags is back in the lineup. For the Wizards, Davis Bertans, 12 and 6 with 4 triples, a steal, a block. He is a 12-team league guy. Minutes are up, usage is fine, shooting is great. He is putting up big numbers almost every night, while Brad Beal, 41 minutes again. I continue to state my concern with his playing time. He's like at 40 minutes a night over the last 2 weeks. And Scott Brooks can say, oh yeah, we rest him in practice. That's fine. It's a completely different intensity during practice than what it is during the games. And this level of playing time, it really isn't great, I don't think. And we'll see how that pans out for a bloke that has had repetitive stress injuries on his legs before. 20 points, 8 assists, 2 triples for Beal. Isaiah Thomas, big game from him. Now, he had really struggled as a starter. 17 points with 4 triples, not a huge amount else. His games as a backup were significantly better. They did play a lot of 3-guard lineups in this one with Thomas, Beal, and Smith together, so that helped him boost his minutes up. He's never going to be Boston Isaiah Thomas. He's better than Denver Isaiah Thomas. He's better than Cleveland Isaiah Thomas, but he's really a fringe 12-team league guy at the moment who can't get back into that must-roster territory. Flaming Mo Wagner. Another big game from Wagner, 12 and 11, 4 assists. The encouraging thing about not only this game from Wagner, but something that Scott Brooks said before the game, is that he's going to look to play him and Bryant together at some point. Now, I don't know what the hell the wait is. I don't know what the delay is in getting them to play together because he's exclusively a backup to Bryant, but that will help his overall value. He is the 93rd ranked player this season, Wagner, amazingly in only 19 minutes, averaging 12 and 6, because his shooting is out of control. True shooting of 73%. So there's significant room for regression. 49% of his threes are going in, 70% of his twos. There are real concerns of that dropping off. But for now, the numbers just continually keep on coming. Ish Smith had 7 and 5, but Geordie McRae, 12, 3 and 4 for McRae, took minutes off Troy Brown Jr., off CJ Miles, and looked pretty good out there. So in a deeper format, McRae's value in terms of being a streamer, it's definitely there. As for Troy Brown, we're all well aware that he's a 12 drop. He's probably a 14 drop as well. 15 minutes for him, scoreless. It looked great in that second game back, but not much more apart from that. Rui Hachimura, I can't stress enough, I don't think he's a 12-team league guy. Get rid of him. 7 in 23 minutes. He offers such little value to me as a fantasy player, and you know that I don't like him long term. While it wasn't the great Tom Bryant night, 14 and 8 in the Tanks, 28 minutes. All right, let's move on to the next one. We're looking at the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks. The Nets beat the Knicks 103-101 in Madison Square Garden. While Kyrie Irving and Karis LeVert are out, and Irving is going to miss at least the next 2 games after this one, Dinwiddie is putting up big numbers. Big Spence had 30 points in 35 minutes, 4 assists. Now, the inefficiency was terrible from the field, but excellent from the line. He was not a 12-team league guy when everyone was healthy. Now, LeVert's still a few weeks away. Irving, we don't exactly know. So Dinwiddie's worth holding now. He's a sell high if you can get some good high value back, but otherwise just ride it out. And at the end, if you have to drop him, you have to drop him. I wouldn't be selling, because maybe Irving's shoulder issue, maybe it lingers for like a month or 2 months, and we hope not, but maybe it does. And if that case, Dinwiddie can keep putting up these numbers. The artist formerly known as Taurean Prince had 14, 11, and 5. He's hovering around 12-team value. Probably should be on a roster, but he's quite hot and cold as we've come to expect. Well, Jarrett Allen looks great. 18 and 10 in 32 minutes. Is really impacting DeAndre Jordan, who still remains rostered, DeAndre does, in 74% of leagues. That is a drop and a half, so go and get rid of him. Allen should be rostered in all leagues. Foul trouble will limit him, but it does appear that most games we're just going to get Jarrett Allen out there, which is great. Smoking Joe Harris hit 3 threes. That's what he is, a 3-point streamer. I don't have him as a must-roster 12-team league guy most of the time. Well, Garrett Temple added in 12 points with 4 threes and 2 steals, and while he is getting the minutes, he's not a consistent enough player to be a regular contributor. On to this horrible franchise that is the New York Knicks. So much about this team doesn't make any sense. RJ Barrett was out. That's got nothing to do with them making sense or not. So what they did is they got their second-year lottery pick, who they're barely been playing, and who is really a power forward, Kevin Knox, to start at shooting guard. Forget about the fact that you've got Wayne Ellington, you've got a player who's better than Luka Doncic and Alonzo Trier there. You've got Damian Dotson, who could actually play in that spot and be a spacer for the other players. No, let's shoehorn a bloke who we've shown no trust in Kevin Knox into a position that he can't play. Unsurprisingly, it didn't go well. 5 points in 18 minutes for Knox, 3 assists, a steal, and a block. Now, I don't think Knox is good. I don't think he'll ever be good. But the way they handle him is pretty disgusting. The fact that they also give 33 minutes and 17 shot attempts to Marcus Morris is another poor sign of coaching and the front office. 26 points for Morris, 7 triples, 4 rebounds. That's all well and good. It's fantastic. But what does this mean for this team that's going absolutely nowhere, that Morris is out there putting up these numbers, taking away development opportunities in a horrible style of basketball that he plays? He's, without any doubt, Morris is a 12-team league guy. No doubt about that. Will it last when we get into February? I have significant doubts about that. Now, whether you can sell high or not remains to be seen. He should be someone you're trying to do that with, because none of this makes any sense with what the Knicks are doing. Julius Randle, 15, 8, and 4. He does really struggle on this team. Defensively, it's an issue. Turnovers, he's just so poor to watch in terms of all those consistent spin moves. He's just one of the hardest players in the league to watch, really. Those numbers are okay. He still is a must-roster guy. Of course, Mitchie Robinson, he didn't take it from here.
And Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
Only 19 minutes because he fouled out. 6 points. Still had the 3 blocks, so not a complete write-off of a night, but it's continually frustrating with not only him, but the way that he is coached. I think both Fizdale and Robinson have equal blame for the disaster that has been Mitchie Robinson's season. He is still a buy low guy to me. Ntilikina, 5 assists in his 32 minutes. Having any trust in what Ntilikina does is pretty tough. While they still ran that 3-center rotation, which is completely unnecessary. Taj played 20 minutes and Bob Portis played 17. The Duke Wayne Ellington, he was the flavor of the day, 28 minutes for 12 points. He's just as likely to be out of the rotation on the next game than he is to play any sort of large role. All right, let's move on to the next game now. It was the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns at Denver, 116-104. The Nuggets get the victory here. It was a lot closer than that until late in the game when the Denver bench really took over. The Suns were once again without ravishing Rick Rubio and Aaron Baines. Frank Kaminsky started at center. He got into some foul trouble. So check Diallo. Massive game from Diallo. 22 and 6 in 36 minutes. This is a bloke whose per minute numbers for the Pelicans were always high, but never seemed to get that opportunity to put up numbers. He was buried here in Phoenix. He had a decent game against the Pelicans last time out. Even better here. But of course, when Baines comes back and when Ayton comes back, I just don't see where he gets these minutes. And look, I would much rather see Diallo playing over Kaminsky in this interim time frame, but this is just likely one of those weird out-of-the-box type games, much like Dario Saric's performance. He's been dreadful the last week, 2 weeks. 18 and 17 here in 33 minutes. He hit 4 threes. He shot 64% from the field. There's a massive amount of unsustainability about that from Šarić, and I wouldn't be getting overworked with it. He's more of a 14-team league guy. The other weird performance we got, Tyler Johnson started at point guard. He's not anything to do with this team's future. He's not going to be on this team next season. He played 17 minutes. Ali Okobo, who I thought was a real steal for the Suns in the draft last season. He had shaky moments last season. He wasn't coached all that well, and then looked like he was just completely out of the mix here, behind Rubio, behind Javon Carter, behind Ty Jerome, behind Tyler Johnson. But stepped it up here. Okobo did 16 points, 4 assists, 3 triples, shot the ball well. Can he force his way into that backup point guard role and take some minutes away from Johnson? Maybe. I don't think the Rubio situation is going to be a long-term back injury problem, but it's at least worth keeping this in mind that maybe Okobo is starting to show that flash that I thought he could have before last season began. Oubre was a little bit down in this one, 10 and 3. He'd been great the last couple before that, while it was finally a bad shooting night from Devin Booker. 12 points, 5 assists, and just 1 3-pointer in his numerous attempts, 7 attempts, in fact, in total. On the Denver side of things, Farton Will Barton was great. 22, 8, and 4. Another 4 triples, while Jamal Murray also had 22 with 4 threes and 7 rebounds. Big games from them, while Big Chungus, Nikola Jokic, only 8 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals. Still not at his best. Still a bit of a buy low. I wouldn't be banking on him being a top 7 player for the rest of the season. Maybe top 15 is what you should be looking at. So don't buy low, trading away your 10th best player, hoping he is better than that. But you still might be able to get some decent value. Paul Millsap, unbelievable night. Again, 23 points in 27 minutes. This is not as good as some of his other performances because no other stats really came with it. No assists, no steals, no blocks. But he's significantly outperforming expectations I had, while Jeremy Grant is not that great. I didn't think Jeremy Grant would be a 12-team league guy this season. I also didn't think he'd be this bad, nor did I think that Gary Harris would be this irrelevant. 6 points in 35 minutes for Gary. He is a 12 drop, a 10 drop, a 14 team drop at this point. The wing rotation, man, it's tough. Juancho Hernan-Gomez, 9 minutes. Michael Porter Jr., 8 minutes. And then Malik Beasley, who hadn't played in forever, came off the bench in the second half and played 11 minutes. Sparked the run, had 6 points with 2 triples. Really getting value out of these backup wings is going to be pretty tough, considering that they're going to just move this rotation all over the place, while Monty Morris remains an interesting deep league assists stream player. Not much else to really talk about with this team. Mason Plumlee did play through a headache for 14 and 7, one of his better games of the season. But of course, there's not a huge amount to see with him as we move forward for his overall fantasy value. All right, on to the last game of the day. A bit of a blowout in the end. The Pelicans go down to the Clippers 134-109. On the Pelicans side, Brandon Ingram was great once again. 24, 8, and 5. He blocked a shot. He hit 3 threes, still shooting the 3 ball at a tremendously high rate. It's come down a little bit. Only 41% overall in this game. His 2s weren't quite there, but a really staggering improvement in his free throws also. This was a bloke that through his first 3 seasons never cracked 70%, and he's sitting up at 77% and hitting over 89% over his last 4 games. Obviously, really impressive stuff there from Ingram. We've also seen big improvements in terms of his defensive stats. His steal and block numbers are almost double. You do worry, or I do worry, that when Zion does return, there is going to be somewhat of a hit here. Usage is sitting at 30%, nowhere near. He's never, ever been at that level, just 24% last year. So you do have that worry, or I do have that worry, that there is going to be some level of drop-off when Williamson does arrive. How those shots get distributed is going to be quite interesting. But maybe he can maintain it. Maybe can he maintain a 30% usage? It is pretty tough to expect for a guy like Ingram to continue to do that, especially with Zion around and Drew Holiday getting his shots as well. But Ingram is putting up some really strong numbers. There is still that sell high component though, where he's shooting 52% overall, and free throw numbers are working in his favor also. But obviously a really good breakout season for Brandon Ingram. Holiday had 18, 7, and 4. Wasn't his best night, but still pretty good. While Etuan Moore jumping into the Josh Hart role, 17 points with 3 triples. Not too much else. Not a guy to really rely upon. Jackson Hayes, 29 minutes, 7, 3, and 3. Yeah, look, he's got some marginal stream value until Derek Favors eventually returns. Even if Favors doesn't start, he's going to cut into what Hayes is doing. While Okafor had 10 and 6 with 3 blocks. That's definitely one of these.
A surprise, to be sure. but a welcome one.
I wouldn't really think that Okafor, now I know that Okafor's not a 12-team league guy, Hayes is a borderline guy. I would add Lonzo Ball if he's available, 9, 4, and 5 off the bench, while Redick, that hot streak started to cool off, and I think it could actually get a bit cooler for Redick. I mean, 25 minutes, 12 points, and 2 triples for him. Kenny Williams, 22 minutes, 2 points. Yes, he's starting. I don't expect that to last much longer, and he is not a 12-team league player. On the Clippers, both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they struggled. They were both negatives in terms of plus-minus. Both shot poorly, 37% for the fun guy, 30% for the Beatle, Paul George. George had 18 and 5 with 6 triples and 3 steals, while Leonard had 26, 4, and 6. So still relatively strong nights overall, just some deficiencies there. But the table Montrezl Harrell was fantastic. 34 and 12, 2 blocks, 72% and 80% from the line, while Lou Williams... talked about him ad nauseum about being a bit of a sell-high guy. Only 25 minutes here, 19 points, 4 assists. I think this is more of a realistic expectation, not those 33 minutes, 27-point type performances. Again, selling high means if you get a top 50 guy back, you do it. You're not going to sell him for a top 90 sort of a player, because that's the sort of area that he can be. While Pat Beverly probably should be on a 12-team league roster, 10, 7, and 4, 2 threes, and 2 blocks for Pat. Flaming Mo Harkless started, didn't do anything. Zubats grabbed you 10 boards, and that's really about it for him. While Scooter Magruder, Michael Green, Jerome Robinson, they mopped up the rest of the minutes. And when Landry Shamet comes back, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how they run that Magruder, Harkless type, Shamet type situation when he eventually gets back in action from that ankle sprain. Let's have a look at some injury reports. Just a couple of things that happened over the weekend. Kemba Walker, of course, with that scary neck injury. It looks like he has escaped a really serious situation. He is doubtful for Monday. I'd imagine there might be one more game off for Kemba, but it's not going to be a long-term situation, thankfully, because it looked pretty frightening the way he smashed his head straight into Ojeley's body. Wanamaker's going to be the short-term beneficiary there. As for Rudy Gobert, he sprained his ankle. He missed a game over the weekend, and he is questionable for Monday. That gives some short-term value for Tony Bradley, but of course, with 11 games on, you're not going to be adding Bradley and really getting any value out of it. It does help the usage of other guys like Bogdanovic and Conley and Mitchell and those blokes in those situations, and even Royce O'Neal to a degree. And if you do have an open spot in a 20-teamer or an 18-teamer, a short-term stream of Bradley might work out. That's assuming Gobert actually even misses, or even Jeff Green could be in play in that situation. Let's have a look now at the games for Monday. 11 games on. We're going to be looking at FanDuel pricing here. All right, we're looking at FanDuel pricing here today. 11 games on the slate. Again, just be real careful with what you're outlaying on these really large slates. The Brooklyn Nets and the Cleveland Cavaliers, the first game, the spread is even for some reason. The total 217.5. That seems like a real opportunity to get Brooklyn at a pick'em type of situation, even though it is a back-to-back for them traveling on the road. Kevin Love missed last time out for Cleveland. He seemed pretty confident that he'll be ready to go here. So that's obviously a boost to them. If he is out, Larry Nance is the player who does get that step up. Darius Garland's at 3,900 as a point guard. He has been obviously up and down, maybe for tournaments, but that's really about it. While the Padawan Colin Sexton's the opposite. No upside because he doesn't do anything apart from score, but constantly in that 25 to 28 point zone at 5,400. It's at least okay. I think that's the best way of framing that. Shooting guard Spencer Dinwiddie is actually listed as a shooting guard. He's at 7,800, and with the injury to Kyrie, he's putting up numbers at that level that I think make him worth looking at 7,800. Garrett Temple's not doing it, nor is Iman Shumpert. You got Jordy Clarkson at 45, who I don't actually mind. He was obviously massive last time for Cleveland, dropping in 42. Probably don't expect that, but there's something there for him. At small forward, John Musa's minimum salary. He's in the rotation. He's getting 20 a night. Could he give you a 24 or 25? Maybe, but that feels like almost best case scenario, so he's probably not one to look at. Joe Harris at 51 is too expensive, and the artist formerly known as Torian Prince. I like him at 5,400 here, Prince. I think there's some decent enough value there. Osman and Kevin Porter, they're not going to do it for me. At power forward, Jarrett Allen, of course, the starting center is your power forward. He's at 6,800, putting up 35 a night over the last 5. Not bad value. It is a back-to-back, but big men generally have been putting up some decent numbers against the Cavs, so I think that Allen is at least worth looking at. Larry Nance, the other one, he's at 6,200. That's too high of a price rise to consider him, especially when we don't know Love's status. As for Love himself, 8,800, I want nothing to do with that. At center, Jordan's at 5,400. That's a no from me. While Tristan Thompson at 7,800. Tomo had a really strong game last time out, but prior to that, he'd been struggling, and I think we can do better at the center position than using Tristan Thompson. Next game is the Orlando Magic and the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons, they are 4.5-point favorites, and the total is 207.5. For this one, we know that Nikola Vucevic and Aaron Gordon are going to be out for Orlando, while Reggie Jackson will be sidelined. For the Detroit Pistons, Tone Snell also out for Detroit. At point guard, Markelle Fultz, $5,000. Love the floor in that. He dropped 30 last game. There's a little bit of upside as well in a positive matchup, while Derrick Rose at 5,600 was a strong performer also last time out. I think the defensive stuff here that the Magic can do might be not great for Rose. And at 5,600, I'd much rather have Fultz at the $600 cheaper mark. DJ Augustin at 4,900 historically has torn apart the Pistons, averaging 35 in his last 3 games in 34 minutes. The thing is, he won't get 34 minutes, but he still could be a player that gets you 25 or 26. I'm not massively into him. Langston Galloway at 4,200. Well, he's probably going to play 55 minutes in a game that Tony Snell is out. He has been bad, averaging 17 points in 36 minutes. That's really hard to do over his last 3 games, but there is tournament upside. Anyone who's getting those minutes, who can go on those wild hot streaks, is at least worth your attention. Terry Ross is at 5,000. I don't really see that, but I do see it for Fournier, who's at 5,900, who is really leading this team, especially with Vucevic out at the moment, averaging 36 points over the last 3 games. The Shark, Bruce Brown. Baby Shark, he's at 4,100, and he's giving you 27 a night over the last 5, so why not? I think there's value in that. He's going to start at point guard again, 6 or 7 assists, 2 steals, a block, 4 or 5 rebounds. And if he gives you 4 points or if he gives you 12 points, like that can actually push it over the edge. So I don't mind him at that sort of a cheap price. The man, Johnny Isaac, 7,000, absolutely killing it at the moment. Love him. He is an absolute cash anchor to me, someone you just stick in the lineup and feel pretty good about it. And then you got Weza Wundu, who started last time for Gordo, and then the Duck Luke Kennard, who is really trending down. I'm not interested in Kennard here. At power forward, Griffin's at 7,300. I do think that Griffo would be all right at that game, rested after the back-to-back that he sat out. It's still just marginally too high, while Kem Birch at 5,500, that salary is still too high for Birchie. If it was down at 4,500, then we'd look at him as the starting centre, but I'm not too interested at that salary. At centre, Drummond's at 9,800, just can't get to that level, I don't believe, with Griffin around, so that's pretty tough to rely upon, while Muhammad Bumba's at 4,100. He actually beat that number last time with 23 points. Played 21 minutes because Birch got into foul trouble. I am not ready to hitch my wagon to Mo Bamba at this point. The Memphis Grizzlies and the Indiana Pacers. Jakar Sampson is doubtful. Malcolm Brogdon is back for Indiana, while Marko Guduric is questionable for Memphis. Guduric was in the rotation last game ahead of a healthy Grayson Allen. If Guduric is out, then you're going to see Allen move back into that lineup, would be my guess. At point guard, Ja Morant is at 7,900 because he's been playing really well. But that salary against a Pacers team who does defend quite well against point guards, I'm not sure I want to get in there. While Brogo at 8,500, again, probably too high for Brogdon to really get interested in. With Brogdon back, McConnell and Aaron Holiday, who've been putting up really strong numbers, hard to use them. Holiday's up at 5,900, so that's impossible to really roster him. Jeremy Lamb at 6,300. Maybe it's a smidge too high for Lamb. This matchup is a positive one, though. He's more of like a 28, 29 point guy versus a 32, 33 type player, which is probably where he needs to get to. He's not a terrible guy to look at, though. Kyle Anderson, maybe some floor value, no tournament upside at all, though. Dylan Brooks is the opposite. He get over 40, he get over 5. That's all tournaments for Brooks, who's been getting some pretty strong minutes of late. At small forward, Tony Warren Jr. has been a disaster. He dropped 6 points in the last game, but we all know he can have 60s or 70s, or maybe 70s is going to be far. 50s may be more appropriate. And at 5,800, there's some tournament value, but that's it. Well, Jay Crowder also on a bit of a hot streak. $5,200 he is. He's averaging 30 over the last 3. The minutes are there. The minutes are always there for Crowder. Defensively, wings have struggled against the Pacers this season. I don't think he's a complete write-off here, Crowder. He's at least someone who I'd look at in more of a cash lineup. Domantas Sabonis, 8,900. We're getting 38s and 39s pretty comfortably from him. At 89, you want that little bit more, but this matchup is a positive one for Sabonis, so I do think that he is looking at 40 plus here, so I do like him. Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr., $6,000 for Jackson. Beat it last game, had 36, but we can't trust it. We just can't trust he stays out of foul trouble. The positive thing is, I guess, that he is averaging 27 minutes a night over the last 5, but not quite enough points. More of a tournament guy. Well, Brandon Clark's at 5,400. He's giving us 26, 27 a night. And at 5,400, that's the sort of number you want. Again, the upside for him, though, is relatively limited. At center, Valanciunas is at 6,900.
Giggity.
Of course he is. That salary should have dropped significantly because he's not really doing anything. No way I want him at that price. While Miles Turner at 7,200 struggles to put up the numbers when he plays alongside Sabonis. And I just don't think that he is worth that level of salary investment. Next game on the deck is the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Atlanta Hawks. You've got Josh Okogie and Treveon Graham both questionable for Atlanta. Bob Covington will be back after missing the last game for personal reasons. Cam Reddish is questionable for Atlanta, while we know that John Collins and Kevin Huerter are already both sidelined. At point guard, Trae Young's at 9,700. He had 57 last game. No reason to think that Young can't at least push close to 50 again here. So I do like him quite a bit. While Jeff Teague at 6,100.
My name is Jeff.
Jeff has been putting up 30 plus a night. If one of these guys like Okogie is ruled out, we already know Shabazz Napier is doubtful, so he's not going to play. Doubtful for literally about 10 games in a row. Teague at 61 looks relatively solid to me. At shooting guard, Bembry's at 46. Now, I like it tentatively. If we hear that Reddish is out, I like it a ton. He's averaged 32 over his last 3, so some good value there for Bembry. While Wiggo is at 8,400, Andrew Wiggins, probably just a little bit too high for Wiggins, and while he hasn't quite been the same after coming back from his illness, he's been still okay, but he's not the greatest play out there on the board. At small forward, Reddish is at 4,100. I find it hard to get excited there. While if he is out, though, DeAndre Hunter at 5,500, the usage for Hunter is really spiking at the moment. He's averaging 33 over his last 3. I think in a really positive matchup for Hunter, this is one that we look at as a solid play. Well, Jarrett Culver at 4,000. I probably only want to look at him if Okogie happens to be sidelined, but his recent production has definitely been exceeding the $4,000 price point, averaging 21 over the last 3. And if Graham and Okogie are both out, then I do like Culver quite strongly. Okogie's hard to rely on. Keelan Martin probably not going to do it either. At power forward, Jabari Parker is at 6,900.
Giggity.
He hasn't really been at that level of late. He's been solid as like a 30, 31 point guy, but not a 35, 36 point guy. Seemingly limited of late. More Vince Carter minutes is impacting Jabari amazingly as that is to here. So probably not the one that I'm really super into. While Bob Covington at 63. Covington can easily have a 55 point game. We've seen that from him many times with those weird defensive games, and he hits 5 or 6 threes, but he is just a tournament player. At center, Damian Jones is at 39. Actually, for Jones at 39, that's a strong cash value because you can just come in and give you 18 really easily. And if things get going, he can give you 25. But is it enough for a tournament? Probably not. But for cash, I don't mind it to get some other guys in there. Towns is at 11.6. That looks pretty strong. His recent numbers haven't quite been where we needed them to. Under 50 average over the last 5. But this is a really strong matchup for him. Gorgie Jeng, Alex Land, Bruno Fernando. I don't really see massive appeal with any of those gentle fellows. The next one we look at, the Philadelphia 76ers and the Toronto Raptors. In Toronto, the Raptors are 1-point favorites. The total is 214. Serge Ibaka is doubtful coming back from his ankle, while Furkan Korkmaz is questionable and Kylo Quinn is also questionable. At point guard, Simmons, 8,600. Too highly priced, I believe, against this Raptors team. And then you've got Trey Burke and Shake Milton. They're not going to do it for me. But Fred VanVleet will. 7,700. Much like Bradley Beal, I worry about these minutes that he plays. It's just a ridiculous amount, averaging 42 over the last 5 games in 42 FanDuel points in 38 minutes over his last 5 games. I feel like he's got a really safe floor here. Joshie Richardson's at 6,000. Elite against Miami last time out, 42 points. I don't fully trust Richo here to be a consistent enough producer. Terrence Davis, Norm Powell, Furkan, Matty Thomas, no interest in them. At small forward, Toby Harris is at 73. I think there's limited upside in Harris, but also he's a really solid cash option at that relatively low salary, while the Jedi, OG Anunoby.
Hello there.
His last couple of games have been pretty bad. 22 points average over the last 3 at 5,900. I don't see how you can really go anywhere near him at that salary. At power forward, Horford's at 6,000. Cash play real strong. Tournaments, not so much. While Horford at 7,300. I think there is cash value in that. Tournament, I'm not so sure of the upside. While the water boy Chris Boucher at 4,900 gets a little bit of a reprieve with Ibaka not returning, but also not someone that I'm super into here. While Hollis Jefferson at 5,200. He's been giving us around that 25-point mark on most nights. I'm not really thinking that's one that we want to look at, though. I love Embiid, 10-2. Give us 50. Totally in on that. While Marc Gasol at 55.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Again, cash value is there for Gasol, limited upside, and when Ibaka returns, he won't have that same value, but he's got something at least going for him in that high 20s range of FanDuel point scoring. Next up, it's the Charlotte Hornets and the Miami Heat. The Heat coming off that drubbing by the Sixers. They are favored by 10.5 points here. The total is 215 in this game. We know Justice Winslow and Derek Jones Jr. are out again. At point guard, Rozier's at 6,900.
Giggity.
36 in the last game for Rozier, but this is a different sort of matchup. It's not going up against the Bulls. The Heat are quite a good defensive team, so that's probably going to be hard to use him at that salary. And then you got the iron shoulder, Goran Dragic at 5,700. Winslow out, it helps him a little bit, but I don't have full trust in him as an option. While Kendrick Nunn at 5,800, the minutes have been well down for Nunn. Of late, he is averaging under 20 points in the last 3 games and 24 minutes only. At 5,800, that's just too high of a price to invest. Dunk Robinson's at 42. He's wildly inconsistent. I'm not keen on him. While Tyler Hero at 4,800. His numbers haven't been great, but they've been that 25-point mark, which is pretty okay at 4,800, and that opportunity arises again. Devontae Graham's at 7,300, and for as well as he's playing, he's not doing the DFS thing that we need him to do. He's averaging under 30 over the last 5 games, and at 7,300, that's a disappointment. So I'm not sure in a real negative matchup if he is the one we want to go for here. At small forward, Miles Bridges at 56, playing much better lately, averaging 34 over his last 3 and 27 over his last 5. I think at that salary, we can at least consider him. Batum, we won't consider. And then you've got Jim Butler, who I should have mentioned before, is a shooting guard. He's at 9,600. He's getting a ton of assists. He struggled in that game against Philadelphia. But prior, or including that, in his last 5, he's still averaging 43 points. So he's not a bad option at that high salary. Bam Bam Adebayo at 8,800 is a power forward again. Who is doing these positions? He is at 8,800 Adebayo, putting up some good numbers. He's not putting up 8,800's worth of good numbers most nights, so that's tough to rely upon. While you've got Marvin Williams and Paul Washington Jr. Paul is at 5,800. He is doing just nothing, averaging under 20 in the last 5. At center, Olynyk at 4,900 because, of course, he's the... Oh, you know what? Maybe I'm being unfair because the Heat do announce Adebayo as a forward, even though he is clearly, as anyone can see, the center. Olynyk at 4,900. I'm not keen on that. Myers, Leonard, Cody, Zeller, and Bismack Biyombo. Zeller still priced at 6,100, and his minutes have not been at the level that they need to be to return that sort of value. Next game up, the Sacramento Kings and the Boston Celtics. The Kings on a back-to-back. No spread at this point. Kemba Walker is doubtful with that neck sprain that he suffered in that horrifying situation on Friday night, while Bogdan Bogdanovic did play today, but they're not sure if he's going to play in this back-to-back with that hamstring tightness, so he is questionable. When he is out, you have guys like Justin James get a boost in their minutes, and that is a real player. With Kemba out, I think we're going to get a boost to Brad Wanamaker. You're going to get a boost to Shemi Ojeleye as well. I like Wanamaker here, comes in at $4,000. He's averaging 25 on his own over the last 3 games anyway. I think it's a really strong situation here for Wanamaker to play. Smart at 6,400 also comes in as a strong cash option, while Corey Joseph at 47. Joseph's numbers of late at 47. Yeah, he's close to returning that number, but is he a must-roster lock sort of player? Probably not. At the shooting guard spot, Bogdanovic is at 71, which looks super appealing. Now, that is a massively underpriced scenario for Bogdanovic. It's a back-to-back. He's questionable, and the Celtics are defensively quite good, so it might be time just to fade off in him. That might be a bit of a trap play. Bud Hields at 7,200 has been nowhere near that number. At small forward, Jaylen Brown's at 7,100. He's going to have to absorb some of Kemba's usage. Can he turn it into production? I'm thinking yes. So when we're looking at him at 7,100, there is value in him there, while the pencil Harrison Barnes is at 55. Even today's big game, he still only put up 29 FanDuel points. That's not really enough to inspire huge amounts of confidence, but if Bogdanovic is out, I would look at Barnes as a strong option. For the power forward, Rashawn Holmes 6,200. He's averaging 35 over his last 5. No reason he can't go again at that sort of a price. While Tatum at 82 also should absorb some of Kemba's usage and put together some decent numbers. While Nemanja Bjelica at 5,600. Again, really strong cash value for Bjelica. Tournament value probably a little bit limited, but those strong cash numbers are good. While Vanilla Tice at 5,000, maybe not. I'm not massively enthused. At centre, the Rock DJ. Rob Williams at 36, just too many centres in the mix there. Same with Enes Kanter and the Undertaker, Dwayne Dedman. He really should not be any sort of DFS option at all. Let's go next game up, the Portland Trailblazers, Mallow's revenge game, taking on the Chicago Bulls. This is a pick'em as well. The total is 227.5. Hassan Whiteside has been upgraded to probable. Gary Trent Jr. is questionable. Otto Porter is out for the Chicago Bulls. While Chandler Hutchison is ready to go also. At point guard, you're looking at Tomas Satoransky at 5,000. Despite the limited playing time, he is averaging 30 FanDuel points over his last 3. Is he a must-roster guy? No, but it is a positive matchup for point guards going up against Damian Lillard. While Kobe White, strong GPP guy, 5,200 is a great price. Chris Dunn, no, not interested. Lillard, 9,500, has not been at that level really for a little bit of time, averaging just 38 over his last 5. There's tournament value in him, but he has really cooled off after that hot start to the season. While Archer, Jacquinot, and Simons, they're not going to do it. At shooting guard, Zachary Levine's at 74. He dropped a 53 bomb on the Hornets. Of course, it was on some really hot shooting that is not likely to continue. We'll see how that role goes for him. I don't mind him as a GPP guy. I do think there is a real worry that he is over-rostered, and that might be a reason to steer clear. While CJ McCollum on fire, he's at 7,700. He is averaging 48. I much prefer using CJ than Zach at that $300 extra mark. Rocket Rodney Hood's at 44. I see very limited value there. While Carmelo Anthony's getting a lot of minutes, he's getting a lot of shots. He's at 4,800. If a few of them go in, maybe he can get to that number. But really only for tournaments because I'm not convinced that it's going to go in. Hutchison and Bazemore and Nasir Little, no. Power forward, Thad Young is a no from me. Danny Gafford is a no also. While Labissiere is at 4,100. With Whiteside back, it's pretty hard to trust Labissiere or Anthony Tolliver. Well, Lauri Markkanen's at 7,100. That is too high for a bloke that can't really hit anything, and it's too high to even consider him as a GPP flyer. At center, 7,000. Wendell Carter Jr., he is putting up big numbers, and centers against the Blazers and against Hassan Whiteside have been able to go off this year, so let's go with him. Interestingly, centers against Wendell Carter and the Bulls have been able to go off. So 8,100 for Whiteside is okay. I just wouldn't want to use him in his first game back from that hip issue, considering this bloke is not the highest effort player in the NBA. Next up, the Utah Jazz, the Milwaukee Bucks. No spread at this point because Rudy Gobert is dealing with a sprained ankle. He missed last game. Tony Bradley started in his place, and Jeff Green got a bump as well.
My name is Jeff.
While Ersan Ilyasova is probable for Milwaukee. Of course, Chris Middleton is sidelined there too. At point guard, Bledsoe's at $8,000. I think that's just too high. George Hill's at 42, while Conley's at 72. I like Conley at 72 there as more of a tournament upside guy. Manny Moutier, no thank you. Sterling Brown at shooting guard is at 3,900. No. Don Mitchell at 87. That's a nasty price rise for Mitchell. I don't mind it. He's giving us 40 most nights. I think he's at least in play. It's not the greatest one out there. Well, the big Ragu, Dante DiVincenzo at 5,100. Really limited upside. But in terms of floor value, I think it's okay. Small 40s, Giannis Antetokounmpo, 12-5 for Antetokounmpo. He's been around that 57 to 60 point guy. You probably want a little bit more out of him, and this matchup against the Jazzy is not an optimal one, so it might be one that I steer clear of there for him, while Ingles at 43 is a strong fader, and Bojan Bogdanovic at 67. Been putting up the numbers, but again, I'm not really sure that he can sustain that level of pricing to return that value back. At power forward, O'Neal's at 41, Green, Ilyasova, I'm not interested. At center, Gobert at 83. Now, if Rudy played, I would really like him at that salary. He's averaging 48 over his last 5. That would be strong. While Lopez at 6,600 has been blocking a lot of shots, but not really getting to the 6,600 mark in terms of DFS value. And if Gobert plays, I think that further limits what Brook can do, although he is averaging 32 points the last 3 times against Utah in only 26 minutes. It's still not enough to justify a $6,600 price tag. Next game, we look at the Lakers and the Spurs. The Lakers are 5-point favorites. The total is 223 points. Anthony Davis is probable. Alex Caruso is questionable. At Yeah, that's right. Yeah, at point guard, DeJounte Murray's at 6,700, has not been at that level, though I would not feel good about that at all. While maximum, Derek White at 49.
Maximum Derek.
Again, nowhere near that number, and with Murray returning after he rested last game, it's hard to see him get to that value. Rajon Rondo's at 44, actually putting up decent numbers as a DFS contributor, 25 average over the last 3. It's coming on really high usage, so I'm not sure it's going to stick, but the matchup's a positive one, so he's at least worth a GPP look, as maybe he gets you 30. Patty Mills had a strong game last time out, but Murray back in the mix probably limits him. At shooting guard, KCP at 38, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He's getting the looks. He's getting 20 a night. And at 3,800, I think that's really good. But the upside is really not there for him. He is still more of a solid enough floor cash guy. Well, DeMar DeRozan's hitting every shot under the sun. And at 7,600, he's giving value there. But if he just doesn't hit those shots, then there's nothing there. Like, it just drops off really, really suddenly. Even like he's shooting 55% from the field. He's still only averaging 42 FanDuel points over his last 5. And that could drop off and really cause a problem. Bryn Forbes and Danny Green, no thank you. At small forward, LeBron James. He's at 11,400. His last few games have been a little bit disappointing in terms of value, averaging just 49 points over his last 3, which is more, it's not quite what you need, but he's also got a really safe floor and significant upside. So he's in play. Rudy Gay's at 53. No, not for me. At power forward, the future MVP, Kyle Kuzma, is averaging 11 points over his last 3 games, so that's going to be a no right there for me. While Aldridge at 75, a little bit more consistency coming into his game at the moment with a 39 average over the last 5. I don't dislike using him here, although the matchup against the Lakers hasn't gone in his way. Different personnel recently, but I don't really know about the matchup with him and Anthony Davis. Speaking of Tone Davis, 11,800. Feel all right about that. You're going to get 55 almost minimum for Anthony Davis. And at center, Pirtle's at 39. That is an absolutely fantastic cash price, assuming he starts. 24 average over his last 5. If you get 24 to 25 points out of a $3,900 player, that is a great way to start off a lineup to get some of these other guys in. McGee and Howard, they're not going to be the ones that get it done for you. Next game we look at is the last game of the day. It is the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Golden State Warriors. It's Westbrook and Durant versus Curry. And, no, it's not. It's the lubricant Kai Bowman taking on Darius Bazley. MC Hamidou Diallo is out. Draymond Green is questionable. Nerlens Noel is questionable also. At point guard, the lubricant at 4,600. 44 points Bowman put up last game. If Draymond is out, that is an absolute lock play to me as well. Really, really like that. Well, Chris Paul's at 7,600. Paul is giving us some good numbers of late, and this is a positive matchup for Chris, so this would be one where I at least would consider using him. Dennis Schroeder's at 54, great value against the Warriors as well, who just let anyone score whenever they want. And Gilgeous-Alexander similarly at 7,000. These guys have played well against this Warriors team already this season. For your small forwards, the Italian cock Danilo Gallinari.
Hands off my cock!
6,100. Not quite giving us that on a regular basis, but he can do it, quite obviously. There is some tournament value there in him. And the little dog, Glenn Robinson at 47. Wildly inconsistent, but some strong GPP play value too. At power forward, the Wizard Omari Spellman's at 37. Much like Jakob Poeltl in the last game, he's giving us 20 a night. And at 3,700, and if Draymond's out, that really helps him even further. As for Green at 68, his last game, he had 42 points as a starting point guard, and at 6,800, you take that every bloody day. We just don't know if he's going to play, which makes him more of a tournament sort of a player. While the triangle, Eric Pascal at 6,000, would really like that if Draymond's out. Lukewarm on it otherwise. At center, Steve Adams at 5,600. Adams has been giving us close to that number of late. Still a limited upside because of his minutes, but if he gives you 26 or 27, there's at least something there. Well, Cauley Stein at 57. Yeah, I don't really see too much with Will to get all that interested in. All right, let's now flip it and just have a look at some DraftKings guys. I like Whiteside a ton there, 6,100. Wanamaker, Jason Tatum, Wendell Carter, Adebayo, Embiid, Gallinari, Horford, Markkanen, Sabonis, Jalen, Trae Young, Benny Simmons, Jimmy Butler, Wigo, Toby Harris, Marcus Smart, all value in those guys over on DraftKings. Guys, that'll do it for me today. Don't forget to subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on YouTube. Check out my Locked On NBA show today where I did a discussion on the feature about LaMelo Ball, and we talked Lakers and Heat on there as well. Follow me on Twitter at RedRock_Beeble and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Magic Johnson.